Deep tech is where the future is being built. Quantum computing, clean energy, biotech, space tech, advanced materials. But how do students enter this world? What exactly is deep tech? Why does it matter? And why should students start thinking about it much earlier than they imagine? Joining us today, Tulasi Gandikota, Head of University Innovations at FSID, IISc. She has worked with researchers, student founders, and deep tech startups across the country, helping bring lab discoveries to life.
Hi, ma'am. Welcome to edX Live.
Thank you.
So let's start with basics. We have the word deep tech everywhere today. In simple terms, how do you define deep tech, and how is it different from traditional engineering or software careers?
So deep tech is basically if there is a science-based innovation, then it's called deep tech. Okay. So, for example, in the traditional engineering, let's take solar as an example because I come from the chemical engineering background. Let's take solar energy. Okay. Solar energy, if you really look at it, what is a fundamental element there? That is called as the crystalline silica cell. Right. So, what does it do? It is converts light energy into electricity. And if you really look at the solar system that we have on our rooftop, what is called as rooftop solar, what it has is it has the solar panel, which is nothing but an array of these cells, which will convert light into electricity using photoelectric effect, right? And then through them you have a system that will connect all these multiple cells, and then there is an inverter because it produces DC current, and what we use in our daily life is AC current, alternate current. So there is an inverter, and then there is a battery to save, say during the day you will have solar. If there is a sunlight, then you will have sunlight. If you need uninterrupted power, you need a battery to store the energy and use the battery when there is no sunshine. Or otherwise, if you are connected to the grid, then the grid will supply the current whenever there is no solar energy. So in this one, if you really look at the fundamental cell, crystalline cell, silicon cell that was proven in the lab, was in the 1950s, right? So the solar PV as a this thing was based on some scientific discoveries or the innovations happened in the 1950s. But today, if you really look at, there is so much development happened, and both efficiency has improved from whatever 2%, 3% that it was in the 50s to today, close to 30%, so that it is competitive to other power technologies. And then if you look at it, what is today, it has become more like a engineering problem, in the sense everything is established. There is no unknown here. Today, if you have to put a solar rooftop power, there are a lot of suppliers, and there is a lot of standardization that happened, and there are norms, etc. So that somebody who needs to set up this solar power on your rooftop today is a simple engineering problem, right? That is, somebody will have, you have some rules, you follow those rules, and there are problems, you solve those problems and put it. Okay. But where is deep tech today, if you really look at this whole solar thing? So the conventional solar, which is based on the crystalline silicon, has some defects. For example, is it too expensive, although the cost of making it has come down. It is still expensive, and it is like a rigid plate. So you want to put it on a flexible solar. So we have a startup called ABXVPV, which is working on flexible solar, which is based on a new material, which is perovskites, right? So there are advances in the materials that are used, from, let's say, crystalline silica in the case of solar PV to perovskites. So the deep tech today, flexible solar cells are a deep tech. Maybe down the line that becomes a engineering solution. Similarly, if you really look at the software, just doing a simple software with certain to solve a problem or to provide a service is software. But there are advanced software, like you probably hear every day about AIML. So how do you write code to bring about efficiency or to bring about insights? That becomes the deep tech. So to put it very simply, deep tech is something there is a little bit of unknown. Requires a lot of research, and it requires you to everywhere you need to solve problems, whether it is software or engineering or anything. You have to have the software, but the amount of unknown and the amount of research that is required to bring a solution or a product is deep tech.
So a lot of students are curious about deep tech but don't know where to begin. How can they start early?
Yeah, I think today there is a lot of awareness, thankfully, about deep tech. But I think just being what you call whatever you are studying in your textbooks. So these days the textbooks are quite nice for the school students, especially. There are a lot of activities, which is basically called as experiential learning, right? So students should not read them as another theory or a concept, but actually use the facilities available to them. It doesn't have to be very fancy. They don't need very fancy labs, right? Use whatever you have at home, whether it is in the kitchen or is in the small tool set, or go to a lab that allows you to tinkering, the Altel tinkering labs. Some of them are quite well equipped, right? So just basically experiment with your hands, whatever activities is suggest. For example, I use the photoelectric effect, right? How to make a PN junction, right? How to make, how to convert, how to prove photoelectric effect or Newton's laws or anything that you are studying. Just don't read them as a theoretical or a memorizing idea, but actually try to do with your hands and learn through that experiential learning. That is the first and the starting point if you are a school student. If as you grow up, you become an engineer or you take up science career, look around, see the problems that are around you, whether it is water, for example. What is the basic needs of human being, right? It is water, clothes, shelter, right? So we have certain way of doing things, but there could be challenges in that way. For example, water is a problem, right? But there is abundant water in, let's say, sea. How can we convert? There are reverse osmosis technologies that are available. Are there challenges with those? How can we solve this problem? So just being what you call aware and curious about your surroundings, knowing, identifying the problems that we as a society face, and trying to use science to solve the problems is a great way to get into deep tech.
So that was a great explanation, ma'am. On the same lines, what are the core skills that truly matters for someone who wants to enter deep tech?
I think curiosity, just being curious, to know, to learn, to ask, and asking questions, and having that problem solving mindset, as I told you before. And exposure definitely matters. For example, places like ISC and other institutes who open up their uh, campus to everybody on one day year or whatever, right? And there's a lot of information available on the internet. There are a lot of nice educational videos through different channels. So just being curious to learn, and not afraid to ask questions, whether it is to the teachers, to your parents, to whomever you come across, and not what you call don't don't have any fear. Just try and be safe. Of course, nobody wants anybody to try, but you have to be what you call courageous enough to just try with your hands to do. And in addition to this, I think, as I said, the schools have adult tinkering labs, the colleges have the incubation centers, and then places like ISC have these incubation cell and innovation cells. So take advantage of these kind of things that are available to you. Participate in these hackathons, for example. Government of India, especially for the science engineering students, they kind of put these hackathons, which are the problems faced by different government departments and the private companies, and participate and learn teamwork. Don't have to solve everything by yourself. Form up with others, learn from each other, and this is not just for the science students, because end of the day, to take a research into the market or the lab to market takes everybody to come together. As I said about, again, I take the solar cell example, right? So when it was initially, it was only a scientific problem to be able to get the photoelectric effect and be able to make the silicon crystalline silicon cell But then you really need a whole infrastructure in terms of developing the to markets. You need creative people to make the right products, and you need accounting people to make sure that the right accounting metrics are followed, and you need the whole, as they say, no, a lot of different skills to take any research into the market, and not and that is not unique to deep tech in that sense.
That's very nice, ma'am. I think students right now will know where to start off. So my next question is, we are also seeing a rise in young deep tech entrepreneurs across India. What is enabling this shift? And how can students start turning their ideas into deep tech startups early on?
Yeah, I think that may be because of the what you call India has been doing a lot of research, right? We have many universities. Some are really good, some are not so okay. But there is a lot of research happens, right? So mostly the research output is measured through publications. But the real value to the society only comes when we have translate this research into products. As I said, let's take the semiconductors, right? So that's another industry where I had some exposure to. So what can students do? They can design the semiconductor designs, or what they call as integrated circuits, and there's a lot of innovation that is required. But doesn't require you to have high-end infrastructure like fabs, etc., access to fabs. But if you really want to make a real good deep tech science-based product, you need all. You need an engineering skill, you need a research infrastructure, and you also need an entrepreneurial mindset. In the end, it is not just enough to know the theory, but you also need to know who needs it. For example, the simple questions that we ask students is, what problem are you solving? Right? For whom is it a problem? Are you the right person to solve the problem? And if you solve this problem, who would be the person or the entity that solving, and will they pay money for you? Because end of the day, entrepreneurship will not survive if you don't make money. Right? So these are the simple questions, but very requires deep thinking and the commitment, perseverance. You asked about the skills I mentioned. Is perseverance, as you might have heard the famous thing that I failed 1,000 times before I succeeded, right? So that fear of failure should not be there. It's okay. It's part of the learning.
So India's deep tech ecosystem is growing fast. From your point at IASC and FSIT, what shift are you seeing that students should take advantage of?
Yeah, I think they just see most of the students that we get in ISC are the science students, science and engineering students. So the kind of at least what I think they should be really excelling in whatever they are doing, whatever field they are doing, because we have wide variety of what is saying the science and engineering fields, ranging from the pure science and physics, biology, chemistry to the all the engineering thing, which covers the applications in all the deep tech areas, be it AML, everybody talks about it, or be it the space or the advanced materials, or bio and medtech. It covers the entire applications can be in any of these domains, right? So what I think what we are seeing is there is a lot more interest now. Uh, so from places like ISC, which was predominantly a research institute, uh, basically making academicians or the faculty, to now there is a lot more interest both from students and the faculty to see how their expertise can be translated into products. Although ISC has a very huge, what do you say, unknown history of setting up several institutions or enabling setting up several institutions in India, but still I think there is a renewed focus, predominantly driven by I would say, the ecosystem as a whole, with government driving a lot of initiatives to promote deep tech entrepreneurship. So we see the same thing here as well.
So on the same lines, can you give us like three trends what is happening in deep tech ecosystem right now?
What we hear is the emerging techs is the quantum technology is one thing that is very much in the news. AML, or the general AML, as one of the emerging in this space, generative AI or even agentic AI or whatever you call the underlying the sub themes under that. And there is a lot of emphasis on the new materials as well, because and climate tech. Climate tech is very generic word, but anything that will reduce the footprint because of our usage, be it on the energy, be it on the environment, or any of these things, generally being more benign, I would say.
So, with rapid advancement in AI, space, climate tech, and biotechnology, what emerging deep tech areas do you believe students should watch closely over the next decades?
I don't think that there is an easy answer, but it depends on the individual, what their interests are, what do they want to solve. Because as I see, some of these are more of application domains. For example, the fundamentals is like still the basics, right? The physics, chemistry, biology, and the interplay between all this. There is no real boundary between any of these if you really see it, right? For example, whatever we call today as AML or generative AI, they're all based on math. The underlying thing is algorithms, and how these algorithms are really do is the fundamentals to it is based in math. But the application of this AI could be into healthcare, could be into energy, could be into space, could be anything, right? So I think it would really help for students to develop that clarity by reading by themselves, getting exposure to the research labs and the research infrastructure in the country, as well as getting exposed to the startup ecosystem as well. And there are a lot of programs that government is doing to promote this awareness, as well as promote a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship uh, across the academic institutes and for the startup ecosystem.
So, what are the some promising deep tech areas sparked today?
As I said, you see what is deep tech? It's based on science innovation, right? The fundamental science. So you have to be really expert if you want to be the technical lead in any of these deep tech areas. So you have to have an expertise. That expertise could be, as I said, in materials. The expertise could be in writing code. The expertise could be in understanding the fundamental physics, like in quantum technologies. You really need to understand the underlying physics of these materials or the communication part of it. So that is a fundamental. That developing an expertise if you want to on the technical side. If you want to be on the business side, which is what entrepreneurship is all about, then you also need to have an understanding of, as we talked about, the customers. And the customers doesn't always have to be individuals. The customers can be companies as well. What problems they are facing? How can I use my deep technical expertise to solve a problem? To give you an example, let us say in the healthcare, I'm just using the things that I know of. Okay, in the healthcare, so there is a problem of, let's say, the diagnostics, cancer detection, right? So today, what does the cancer detection is? Once somebody kind of symptoms are shown, then you kind of do. Can we do detect cancer at an early stage, even before it manifests as some of the symptoms, right? So what does it take? Or can we simplify the diagnostics in terms of just taking a blood sample and detecting cancer, or predicting that, okay, this person could have cancer? What is the probability that this person will get cancer in future? So some of these require you to have a kind of fundamental shift in the way you approach these things. So some of our startups or some of our research in this area is towards those things in detection itself. But let's say you want to cure. How can you cure? Today it is more chemotherapy, or to do some of these things which are have its own positives and not so positives, right? How can you solve that problem? Can you send a nano robot to the place where the cancer is happening? Can you just cure only that without any side effects? That's the kind of holy grail in curing. So in the whole spectrum, you take anything. If you have a fundamental expertise, technical expertise, you could look at multiple different fields and see how this technical expertise can be put to use. And once that understanding is developed, then you need everybody else. As I said, no, you need not just the technical experts, but you need people with the business understanding or a customer understanding. You need all the different fields. For example, the regulator is a big thing in the medtech space, right? You need people with that kind of background as well. So the careers are, as I said, wide encompassing. To your question on the careers, it can be technical experts or a researcher, or it could be the business people, or it could be the kind of people with legal, safety, finance, accounting. So you will have careers, even though it's like any other field, right? It requires expertise of different field, different people with different backgrounds. So I think the careers are quite varied and quite open.
So my final question is, how is AI being adapted in deep tech and how is it emerging?
What is AI? Basically, it is able to kind of learn from the data and be able to kind of do some decision making, right? Like an intelligent way of doing that. So let's say you want to, I'll just take an example of this thing. So there is, again, it's much easier to explain in the healthcare, right? There is a lot of data. There's a lot of imaging that is being done for all kinds of diagnostics. And then right now, we are dependent on the real expert in terms of the doctors to be able to identify the patterns and probably correlate with the disease and then solution, right? So some of this drudgery or expertise can be simplified and much nicely presented to the clinician, in this case a doctor, so with the help of AI, right? And then it saves a lot of their time because all this image analysis is done and is done much faster, much easier through this AML because it learns on its own. Let's say if this pattern has been kind of more likely, if this is the problem, then they will present that. And the role of clinician would be then to kind of take this and correlate using his own expertise to be able to diagnose and maybe saves time for the clinician in the case of healthcare. That's one example, but you can see in every field. For example, you are doing project management and AI could make a lot of these work easier for you by just putting the information in. It could be even simple application where you are trying to read multiple pages to prepare some simple document, right? So again, as I said, can be varied from a simple task to a very complex task, and the human or the expert's role can be more of what you call using their expertise and reducing their time.
So thank you for being on edX Live, ma'am. It was wonderful talking to you. I think students has great insights from this episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deep tech is not just a career, it's a chance to build the technologies that shape our future. And today, Tulasi Gandikota helped us understand how young innovators can start early, explore boldly, and turn curiosity into world-changing ideas. Thank you for tuning into edX Live podcast. Until next time, keep learning and keep questioning.